The history of Batman Arkham. Batman Arkham Asylum launched a little-known British software company named Rocksteady, and they've remained there ever since. They even had their own segment in DC's 2020 online event, DC Fandom. More importantly, it showed game developers and software houses worldwide that in the right hands, video games about comic books couldn't just be good, they could be genre-defining masterpieces. Join us for a brief look at the history of the Batman Arkham series. In 2007, Eidos Interactive gained the rights to make a Batman game. They approached the fledgling software house Rocksteady and were impressed with their Batman game prototype. This resulted in Rocksteady being given the opportunity to develop the game. Rocksteady wanted a similar feel to the wildly successful Batman the Animated Series TV show, which would impact the game in a couple of ways. First, they sought out Paul Dini, who wrote not only for Batman the Animated Series, but also for Detective Comics, the ongoing comic title in which Batman first appeared over 80 years ago. Rocksteady and Dini worked together to create a story. They chose Arkham Asylum as the location of the game due to its isolated nature. This worked to their benefit in at least two ways. They could justify a standalone story, and the artists and designers could narrow their focus instead of having to create an entire city and then working out how to fill it with enemies, traps, and so on. Second, they hired the same voice actors from the show. Kevin Conroy as Batman.
You're needed out there.
Mark Hamill as Joker. And Tara Strong as Harley Quinn, along with many others.
Mr. J doesn't want you following us just yet.
This is rarely mentioned with regards to Batman Arkham Asylum's immediate popularity, but it is certainly a significant factor. But the animated series wasn't the only inspiration for the game. Once they decided to set the game in Arkham Asylum, they found a lot to work with in the graphic novel Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. The comic was written by Grant Morrison and is a deep dive into the neurosis, psychosis, and outright weirdness of many of the inmates of Arkham Asylum. The subtle you are playing a game narrative shown during the Scarecrow segments, as well as the claustrophobic feeling map design, no mean feat in a world map with plenty of wide open spaces, were inspired by the game BioShock, one of my top 5 games of all time. Play it if you haven't. The gadgets and the way they can often be used to solve puzzles were inspired by The Legend of Zelda and Metroid. However, the most successful part of the game, even beyond the amazing graphics, the absolutely perfect sound design, and the incredibly immersive atmosphere, was undoubtedly the combat. The combat went through multiple iterations. The first version was a rhythm minigame, possibly due to the popularity of rhythm games at the time. This was then changed to a 2D mode, which didn't work because it felt even more like a rhythm minigame than the actual rhythm minigame they had just thrown away did. They translated the 2D combat mode into 3D and they knew they'd found their combat system. The game sold very well for a comic book game and surprisingly even introduced many new fans to the world of Batman.
I think he's talking about you, Babs!
About 6 months before Arkham Asylum shipped, work began on the next title in this series, Batman Arkham City. In fact, Rocksteady had already created the play area map for Arkham City. They even hid it for players to find in a certain area of Arkham Asylum. The idea behind Arkham City was very loosely based on the Batman comic crossover event, No Man's Land, in which Gotham was isolated from the rest of the world due to an earthquake. Most of the citizens are evacuated, but some chose to stay behind. In Arkham City, however, a large section of Gotham is barricaded off and used as a prison city, meaning it's full of criminals. In this way, Rocksteady was able to set the game in a city, but also use the same gameplay mechanics they created for Arkham Asylum. Arkham City allowed the player to play as other characters as well, such as Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. The prequel, Arkham Origins, released in 2013, was the first game in the series developed by WB Games Montreal. While it was plagued with problems at launch, most now fixed, the game holds up surprisingly well, especially considering that many fans refuse to acknowledge the game's existence. Arkham Origins launched with a multiplayer component, which is sadly no longer running. Arkham Origins, being set much earlier than the previous 2 games, also used a different voice cast. The next game in the series was the divisive Arkham Knight. With many comic fans guessing the big plot twist before the game had been released, the developers chose to say no, it's a completely new character. This was proven to be a lie after the game's release. We're being secretive here because it's a big spoiler, and like the rest of the series, the game is still well worth playing today. Who will be your go-to Gotham Knights character? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and as always, geek out.